tiny country just broke the IMF's monopoly. They did it by accident, in secret, with Bitcoin. And the 6th largest country on earth is about to copy them. That didn't go well. So what happens when a country of 1.4 billion people have no choice but to follow? This is how the domino effect starts. This is Bitcoin's game theory in action. Someone was just scrolling through Google Earth and spotted something in the mountains of Bhutan. Mining facilities, hidden in the valleys next to the hydroelectric dams. Turns out Bhutan had been stacking in secret for years and now holds $1.3 billion worth in Bitcoin. Daniel Batten, who researches Bitcoin mining around the world, put it this way.
If there were a nation-state exemplification of stay humble, stack sats, it's Bhutan.
While El Salvador was making announcements at Bitcoin conferences, Bhutan was just mining. No press releases, no marketing, no announcements. Because the moment you announce you're stacking Bitcoin, the IMF shows up with concerns. So Bhutan kept quiet. They used excess hydroelectric power that would have been wasted anyway. Zero cost energy. Their Bitcoin holdings now equal 40% of their entire GDP, more than everything else their government owns combined. But to understand why this matters, you need to understand what Bhutan had just escaped, because the IMF has been running the same playbook for 80 years. So here's how it works. A country needs money. The IMF offers a loan. Simon Dixon, who has studied these mechanisms for decades, explains it directly.
The IMF comes with austerity. It comes with predatory conditions. It comes with install a Western central bank that becomes a shareholder in the Bank for International Settlements. It comes with take this loan and you will give it back to us and you'll spend it on our products. And basically we're just printing some dollars and then giving it back to the companies that's going to be getting these contracts from you. And if you don't do everything we say, we're going to tell you you have to install a liberal democracy. And we want to use your currency to devalue your savings and steal all your assets. And you're our That's what an IMF loan is.
When the countries default and the loans are structured so that they often will, the consequences are severe.
The real kicker is if they default, you have all sorts of clauses which say we can build a military base. We can extract your oil, your cobalt, your lithium.
Lots of strings.
Uranium.
This isn't theory. Countries that grew their own food now grow cash crops for export, such as cocoa, coffee, and cotton for the West. Between 1958 and 1966, Ghana's cocoa production doubled to occupy over 50% of arable land. By 1976, groundnuts occupied 70% of Gambia's arable land and 55% of Senegal's. GDP rises on paper because export earnings go up, but the population gets poorer in reality because they can't feed themselves anymore and have to import food at higher cost. For 80 years, the options were simple. Take the IMF loan or collapse. Bhutan found a third option. And what they did was straightforward, but the IMF just never saw it coming. Daniel Batten describes Bhutan's situation before Bitcoin.
Bhutan were 2 to 3 months away because of COVID, because they lost their tourist business, which was part of what was driving their economy. They had 2 to 3 months left of foreign exchange reserves. If it got below that, they wouldn't have been able to pay for imports. Guess who comes in when a country gets to that state of desperation? The IMF.
2 to 3 months from running out of money for food, for medicine, fuel. That's when the IMF typically arrives with their help loan structure. But Bhutan had been quietly mining Bitcoin for years. They had hydroelectric dams producing more power than they could use during rainy season. Excess energy that would flow over the side and just be wasted. They chose to mine Bitcoin with it. Batten shares what happens next.
The IMF said that any country who uses Bitcoin, or whether they mine it, whether they acquire it through purchasing, can expect to destabilize their economy, to destabilize their grid, to destabilize energy markets, to subject themselves to high volatility, to turn off foreign investment. The exact opposite has happened in every single case.
In 3 years, they went from near collapse to giving government workers salary raises. 50% in some cases, 76% in others. Teachers, nurses, medical specialists. Imagine getting a 76% pay rise next year. They used the funds to upgrade the infrastructure, refurbish the airport, and continue stacking. Bhutan didn't just avoid the IMF, they proved the IMF was optional. Now, you could just dismiss this as an anomaly. 800,000 people, it's just a small mountain kingdom. Until the 6th largest country in the world does the same thing. Several countries have tried similar approaches. El Salvador made it legal tender, Central African Republic tried and reversed. Argentina legalized Bitcoin for contracts. And now Pakistan wants to mine Bitcoin with stranded energy. Each time the IMF responded with the same concerns about instability and risk. Each time those concerns have been proven massively wrong. But Pakistan wanting to do this is more significant than you might think. Batten breaks down the scale.
So what's just happened in Pakistan is that Pakistan announced they had 2,000 megawatts of stranded energy, wasted energy that they wanted to use for Bitcoin mining. So to put that in context, 2,000 megawatts, that's 10% of the power of the entire Bitcoin network. So that's significant.
For context, that's enough energy to power 2 million homes. Instead of wasting it, they're converting it to monetary sovereignty. Pakistan has 240 million people. This isn't small country scale anymore. But the dynamic shifts even more. And most people have no idea that this is going on. Pakistan has substantial IMF debt, which should give the IMF leverage. However, Pakistan now have an alternative, China, as Batten notes.
So now Pakistan's in the situation they can go, well, if IMF, you don't want to play ball, we'll just go to China, and China will say, yeah, we'll give you a loan, and we're not going to insist that you stop Bitcoin mining.
Pakistan's called their bluff, and China won't block Bitcoin adoption. Not because they love Bitcoin, but because every country that adopts Bitcoin reduces dollar dependency. Exactly what China wants. The IMF's monopoly position is eroding. Just speaking about monopolies, we all know how bad they are, but when there is a position of monopoly, it really does just mess up the free market. For example, I was just speaking to a lettings agent, and they were saying they're trying to move into this place in town, and they had to get the water redirected so that they could have water at their facility. But there's only one company, Anglian Water, who can do this. And so they just charge a premium, delay, just are not efficient at all. And there's nowhere that you can just leave a review because other people have to use them. They're a monopoly. And that is what the issue is in any monopoly, in any environment. And if you think Pakistan is significant, wait until you see who's next. Now, have a guess who Pakistan's biggest rival is. That's right, India. If Pakistan gains monetary sovereignty through Bitcoin, India faces a strategic decision. Not responding isn't really an option. India already has government officials in early stage investigation of national Bitcoin holdings, as Batten notes.
So again, if Pakistan start, India will have to start, and then you have like the most populous country in the world who suddenly has a Bitcoin strategy. And then it's from there, it's like...
India has 1.4 billion people, 1/6 of humanity. If India adopts national Bitcoin holdings, every finance minister globally faces the same question. Why are we still dependent on the IMF? The choice becomes clear. Stay in the IMF system and watch your currency devalue, or mine Bitcoin and build sovereignty. And the dynamic accelerates itself. Bhutan's reserves could exceed its entire GDP, a milestone only a handful of nations like Norway and Qatar have reached, built over decades of oil revenue. As more nations acquire Bitcoin, those who wait face a brutal trade-off. Buy at today's price or watch early adopters hold a permanently larger share of a fixed supply. And that is game theory. This isn't about Bitcoin's price or short-term speculation. This is about nations discovering an exit from a system that's operated the only option for nearly a century. Bhutan lit the fuse quietly. Pakistan is doing it publicly. India would do it at scale. Bhutan just proved something the IMF never prepared for. Countries don't need them if they have an alternative that they can accumulate independently. Learning all this has made me look at my own setup because Bhutan controls their own Bitcoin. But I had a ledger with security issues and node software that I'd never actually used. Look, I'm not great with the techie stuff, so that's why I kept putting this off. Then I realized nations are using Bitcoin for sovereignty while I'm trusting hardware with known vulnerabilities. So I jumped on a free call with the Bitcoin Way. They walked me through exactly what I needed. That call changed everything. Now I can verify the blockchain myself, move Bitcoin without anyone's permission. Nobody can freeze my account. I went with a free call with the Bitcoin Way in the description if you need help too. Now, the biggest objection I hear is that Bitcoin has no real use case. Nobody actually uses it. Bhutan just destroyed that narrative, but monetary sovereignty for nation is only one application. The real world use cases are far more impressive, and they can actually help you directly right now. Bitcoin is bringing electricity to villages that never had it, cleaning methane waste, protecting refugees, but many people assume this only matters for small countries or the developing world. So wait until you see what it's doing for Steve, who lives near London. I break down exactly how all of this works and whether you could do the same in this video. Because once you see what Bitcoin actually does in real life, you'll never look at it the same way again.